Welcome to the DL. This is the show where we talk about everything in the truck and equipment repair industry. It's my job to help inform and educate you on ways to help your business. We talk with technicians, business owners, associations, industry experts, manufacturers, and even a few you wouldn't think traditionally apply to your business. Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of the DL. I am your host, Tyler Robertson. This is the show where we talk about everything to do in the heavy truck and equipment industry. And I can tell you, me personally, I am a big believer in having knowledge and having some resources out there and understanding what's going on in the market. It's a great tool to have if you're any kind of business owner, from a small business to a big business. And today I have someone here that's going to help us talk us through that a little bit on what they do. So with MacKay and Company, let me welcome John Blodgett, who's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. So John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and spend a little time talking with you.
Well, I know you guys are, like everyone else still, there's working from home and people are not traveling and the world's a little bit different. So, doing these webcasts and podcasts and webinars and everything, I'm sure has been a change for everybody. But let's first talk about, what does MacKay and Company do? What exactly do you guys do?
Yeah, we're a specialized market research and consulting firm, Tyler. We focus on the commercial on-highway vehicle market, trucks, buses, trailers, anything above automotive. It's probably about 2/3 of our business, and then about 1/3 of our business is the off-highway markets, agriculture and construction equipment markets in particular. Our business in those areas is a combination of things. We do a lot of proprietary market research consulting projects for manufacturers, component manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers, private equity firms. But we also have some ongoing services. We're probably best known for our services in the aftermarket side of the business. We have, under the umbrella of the name DataMac, we have a number of services that profile how big is the aftermarket for parts or tires or lubricants used on light-duty vehicles or heavy-duty vehicles, off-highway agriculture, construction equipment, a few different countries. But we're profiling in detail how big the markets are, where parts sold, where they serviced, what types of parts, sometimes brand. So it helps our clients understand what's the opportunity, how much of that are they getting, what's the outlook for those markets. And we have a large database of the folks who own and maintain and buy equipment like that. So we have the ability to get to them and pick their brains about how do you do what you do and why do you do what you do. And so that helps us get to the meat of whatever the question is. So we've been around for 52 years. I have not been here for all of it, but we've been in the industry for that long. So who founded the company? Are they still around today helping out, or what's the history there? Yes, so Stu MacKay founded the company back in 1968. He was the first director of marketing. He was at Cummins, but then he became the director of marketing for Fleetguard, which was Cummins' filtration business, now Cummins Filtration. So that started, and their manufacturing is still in Cookeville, Tennessee. So actually, MacKay and Company started, he left Cummins, or Fleetguard, in 1968, started MacKay and Company. So initially, MacKay and Company was in Cookeville, Tennessee until, I believe, the early 80s. And then he moved the business up to Chicago, so it was a little bit more convenient for our client base. And Stu is still around. He's myself and his daughter, Molly, we bought him out a few years ago, but he still participates on a few conferences and a couple projects from time to time. But he's basically full-time retired now, and as he should be. So he's enjoying the fruits of his labors over the years. Well, I hope one day I can be retired as well. It seems like it's a long, especially during COVID here, it seems like a long way in the future, but that's great. It's been a test run, yeah. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, you've been there for a while too, though, right? Like you're just not a new one there. You've been there for quite a while, as I understand it. Yeah, I've been here for 27 years or so, since 1993. I started my career, I started working for a Caterpillar engine distributor years ago, back in the 80s. And then I got into the aerospace industry, and I was in Southern California for a number of years. I got my MBA at night. I met a girl from Illinois. I was in Southern California. Moved back to Illinois, and then started working for MacKay and Company. And I worked in the proprietary research area back then. And then over time, I morphed into more of a customer support, business development, sales type role. And now Molly and I run the company. So, but yeah, I've been here for half the history more than half right now. So of the company.
So I'm sure you've seen a lot change from when you first got into today's world, right? And we'll talk about COVID here in a little bit. But your client list lists some pretty big name clients out there, right? Like some of the big manufacturers that are out there. I mean, Ford, John Deere. There's truck manufacturers, component manufacturers, private equity companies. I'm assuming they're trying to do market research to figure out what's going on in that whole industry. So how does your company exactly help those people, and why do you have customers? Like, what problem are you solving for those guys?
Well, the problems vary, depending on whatever their issue is. It might be a new product introduction. It might be, private equity. It may be an acquisition analysis, and they want to understand for the target company, potentially they're looking at buying or investing in, how do they compare to their competitors? What's their market opportunity? What are their challenges? What do the competitors and their clients think of them? So we can help from that standpoint. Quite often on the truck manufacturers and component manufacturers, as I mentioned before, we're helping them profile how big the aftermarket opportunity is for replacement parts and where they're bought and where they're sold and typed, so they can adjust their marketing efforts to meet those needs. We also help provide detail and that type of information down to a local area. So for several of the truck manufacturers, we help them understand what's the and also some of the heavy duty distributors, what's the opportunity for aftermarket parts and service in a particular territory. And then they share with us what they're currently doing in that marketplace, so we can show them how well they're doing market share wise. And then they can compare all their AORs or territories across country and how, where they rank and where the opportunities may be to grow the business. But otherwise, it's proprietary research, and it can be just about anything. It's focus groups or brand awareness, new product introductions. If our clients typically want to get some feedback from the marketplace, get some help on direction, and we can do that for them.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people don't realize when a company comes out with a new product or they want to do a new service, they actually do a lot of research before they do that to try to figure out what's the market size, how many can we sell, who's going to buy it. And obviously your company's kind of the experts in this whole the aftermarket world, especially with the parts side, but the whole truck world and everything as well. So
we hope they do the research, because typically it's quite a big investment. So if you think about how much you're going to invest in going into a new product area or a new line or brand or whatever it is, it's worth your time to get a little feedback from the marketplace so you don't miss anything. Sometimes it's real obvious, but so that you don't miss something that may trip you up. So considering the investment you typically make, it makes sense to do some legwork on the front end, make sure you're headed down the right path.
So I'll tell you what, when I first quit my job to come do this thing at Diesel Laptops, someone told me, like, Tyler, why would you do that? Like, what's going to happen once everybody has a diagnostic tool? What are you going to sell then? And I'm like, how many people are there? I'm like, I don't even know. I had no idea when I started. So now, we always do our guesstimations and all that stuff, but it's hard to actually say how many parts are sold in the United States in the aftermarket. That's a big question that takes a lot of research and time, on your company's part to try to go nail down. So let's talk about that a little bit. So COVID-19 hit, the big news headline, every state's closing down, stay-at-home orders, work from home, and then you see the headlines on the trucking market, and trucks lined up hauling toilet paper and filling up grocery stores, and the whole logistics network not bending but not breaking, and all that. So people kept telling me, like, man, Tyler, business must be good. Trucks are still rolling around out there and doing stuff. And I'm like, no one's buying $10,000 diagnostic tools right about now in the middle of a pandemic, right? But then everyone's like, oh, truck parts must be doing good. But now I know you did some research, which I hope we can talk about here. Yeah. But some of the numbers did start to come out from some of these big public companies. So Rush straight up said their aftermarket parts and service revenue down 15.8%. Jeffries had a panel webinar a couple weeks ago. Everyone on there said 20 to 35%. Navistar came out and they said their total sales were down 36%, which was almost $2 billion. And of that, part sales were down 33%. That's including the $2 billion. PACCAR parts were down 18%. So you see all those things, and then you see the news media. The reality that I saw was things definitely did slow down for a lot of people during COVID. What did you guys do in terms of like research, and what did you guys go through during COVID?
Yeah, so it hit us like a surprise, like everybody. I was at a ConExpo construction show out in Las Vegas, in mid-March, and my wife was talking about stocking up on groceries, and I'm wondering what the hell's going on. And then that show got shut down a little early, and then it all hit. So the first thing we realized is this is something different and something new. And we have a number of different reports, but the most frequent report we had from the marketplace was monthly. And so we quickly figured out, well, that's not going to be frequent enough to keep our clients up to date on what's going on. So we started a whole new report surveying fleets and component and truck manufacturers and parts distributors and truck dealers and picking their brains every week about, okay, what are you seeing out there? What are you doing? Are you closing your business? You doing less hours? Or what kind of issues are you having? How are your suppliers keeping up with you? What are your issues? And so we were doing that monthly for 2 months, which was a lot of work, but we wanted to make sure that our clients knew what was going on. And certainly, I mean, we were picking up, I mean, like the numbers you read off, everybody was down and they're getting hit hard, and their business was down. Now, all those sources you mentioned, I mean, the second quarter was terrible, but the kind of the silver lining in all those reports was, those second quarter reporting was, May was terrible, April was terrible, May was terrible, but June was getting better, and the outlook's better. So it was all more positive for the outlook, even though we're not expecting this year to be, near where we anticipated at the beginning of the year. It seems like, on that Jeffries call and then the report earnings, most of those folks believe they're going to, the balance of the year looks pretty good. And in my travels, it seems like, truck traffic is definitely up, and we're seeing better indications from that. We do an forecast outlook for the aftermarket. Typically twice a year we update it, January, and then again this time of year in August. But we did an update in May because everything was going on and the feedback we were getting from folks. And we took that feedback and we looked at a lot of other resources, and then we kind of went through each vocation and said, okay, what do we think the utilization of the vehicles is going to be by quarter? So you look at something like school buses. School buses are not getting used at all. So they're not running, they're not eating parts, tires, lubricants. And we went through each vocation like that. So what's the short-term impact? What's the long-term impact? We have since revised that at the end of July in our latest outlook. And we believe we were probably too negative in the second quarter. It turned out to be a little bit more positive than we anticipated, but still, quite a bit down compared to where last year.
Yeah. And aftermarket's not like this industry where it's going to grow 10, 15, 20% every year, right? It's kind of more like this couple incremental changes, and it's really threw a wrench into everything. And I know I had you on our virtual truck repair expo that we came on, and the main story I was trying to tell everybody that was on that was, look, at that time we didn't know how bad it was going to get, but you really need to go through your income statement or your financials and figure out if my business drops 35%, can you afford to stay in business for how long, and what changes should you be making? Figure it out now so you have a plan before just I'm out of money. So in the aftermarket parts business, do you think there's any long-term effects there? Do you think some of these smaller players that are selling aftermarket parts are really struggling, or do they get through this? And what about the big ones there's the big ones out there, Fleet Pride and Truck Pro and the Vipar Group and all those guys? Do you see long-term implications from this, or is it just kind of, hey, we're already through this thing and let's move on?
No, I think everybody is being impacted, and I think some of those conferences you were talking about and some of the discussions you heard the companies say they had to do some right sizing, they had to make some adjustments in their business plans for the things you just talked about. You can't go with what your business plan was February 1st based on what happened. You had to make adjustments. I think long-term impacts. Well, even in the short term, I know in our business, and I'm assuming this is similar for fleets, and we're getting some of this feedback, that they're not allowing people to come to their facilities because they don't want to jeopardize somebody coming in and spreading COVID or potentially impacting their business. So how they do business, how they interface with their customers, being dealerships or independent parts distributors or whoever it is, that is changing. So it's more electronic, emails, phone calls, and I don't think you ever want to get away. You definitely don't want to lose your personal relationship. But I think this use of electronics and Zoom and whatever else, that's going to be more of a normal going forward, even when we can go out and travel more. I have a friend who he's a senior vice president in a large multinational corporation, and they were spending $1 million a month on travel and entertainment. that's completely stopped. And she said to me, our business hasn't gone down. For her, she's in electronics, so it's been good. But she says it's going to be hard for us to justify spending that money going forward if we can't tell the difference. So I think there's going to be those types of adjustments that, do we need to pay somebody a car allowance to go out and travel around if they can't see anybody, and those type of things.
So 100% same story at Diesel Laptops. When March hit, we had been watching it because we import from 3 countries: China, Italy, and Spain, the 3 that got hit the hardest right away. So we had supply chain effects, back in January and February that started to hit us. And we're like, okay, this could come here. Let's make a plan. But it's a very similar story with the silver lining. So we ended up not laying off any employees at all. Everyone kept working the whole time. We actually ended up hiring 25 employees here the last 3 months. And through that whole thing, we cut all of our travel and trade show money that we were spending. And we even cut all of our Google online spending and Facebook spending we were doing online, because we said, who's going to buy these expensive tools during this time? Let's figure out something else to sell these people. And all of a sudden, you go cut out $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month in expenses, and the sales come back up. You're like, well, maybe I didn't need to do that stuff because things are still working pretty well for us here. So I think there's a lot of that. And I know we both go to a lot of conferences. We were at Con Expo. I've met you at HDAW, the HD Repair Forum. We've bumped into each other a couple times. You're actually the opposite. Usually I meet people on LinkedIn and then find them at a trade show, but we were kind of the opposite there. But one of the things that keeps coming up, especially the parts ones, is e-commerce in truck parts and, the Amazon threat and people moving to the online. And I can say I've seen a lot of online truck parts retailer ads starting to pop up on my social media feeds trying to go get that business. Have you seen or do you see that or hear that from people in the e-commerce and truck parts? And do you think there's going to be a shift that kind of COVID forced upon the market in this place?
No, I think you're exactly right. We've done 2 detailed study on parts buying e-commerce wise in the truck market. First one was in 17, last one was in 19. And we saw an increase of what, fleets are buying more online, and we asked them about their plans in the future. And they all indicated that they'll likely do more online in the future. But then this hit. And part of the things we were asking both fleets and parts distributors and truck dealers is your e-commerce business increasing? And across the board, it was up for most of them because, again, they're not meeting face to face. They may not even be able to call each other because if the guys, they may have a cell number or whatever, but it kind of maybe motivated them, or they had some extra time to go look and say, let's see if I can do this online. And so, it's kind of accelerated that. We thought the trend was going to go more e-commerce, and we, in our forecast was for it to go up, but this really, kind of put some gasoline on it and got it going faster. So
I'm gonna give you my perception of the truck parts industry, and maybe I'm total off base here. I'd love to just throw you my opinion and hear what you have to think, but. So I look at the automotive world for automotive aftermarket parts. It used to be a lot of mom and pop automotive parts retailers, and then O'Reilly's, Napa, Advance, all those guys came in, and pretty much you don't find a lot of mom and pop independent part retailers. They're out there, but there's just not a lot of them, and their business from the ones I've talked to is kind of going down, right? So then I see the HD side, and I see the e-commerce side come in. I see the OEM dealers getting more aggressive, trying to get that aftermarket business, and the OE dealers. I mean, there's some big ones out there that are just getting bigger. The Rushes, the MHCs, the JXEs. I mean, those guys are just trying to grow an economy of scale, and they're pushing out a lot of the small independent, smaller OEM dealers, right? So I don't know. Am I totally off base saying if you're an aftermarket parts retailer, you need to figure out a new way of doing business besides just driving around and talking to customers and trying to supply the same parts your competitor can? Or does that strategy, what they're doing, still work 5-10 years from now?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, relationships are key, and you got to keep those up. But if you're not have a presence online or don't offer more than the face-to-face or phone call offering to sell parts, I don't know how you're going to exist down the road. You got to have that. I mean, you want to be able to have a customer who may be working on something late at night and wants to put in an order, be able to have that option to do that. So there's certainly consolidation going on. There's certainly it becomes more of a struggle for smaller dealership organizations, smaller independents to keep competitive. But the buying groups and then some of the acquisitions help those. I don't think the footprints are going to change, but the ownership plan profile is going to change.
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to that conference, I remember talking to people and they were really worried about Amazon getting into the market. I mean, Amazon's got distribution centers everywhere and the stats and the amount of warehouses they're building and how they're getting their own trucks now and their last mile delivery and all these things. I mean, what happens if Amazon says, you know what, we really want to be in the HD world. We're going to try to go direct with every HD parts manufacturer and just stock our warehouses. Like, why have they not done that, you think? And what happens if they do?
Well, they've certainly tried, and they are doing some of that. But at the end of the day, truck parts, unless we're talking about a nut or a bolt or something, other than that, there's typically, you got to have somebody who can answer questions for you and competently answer questions for you in a quick manner. So they can do a lot of the behind the scenes efficiencies, but the customer support is kind of really where the issue is. And one thing we learned in our e-commerce study, we talked to folks about not only why they're using online, but sometimes also why aren't you using online? And the biggest response back was, well, I want to support my local distributor. I don't want to see them go away because, I may know what filters I want to buy and that's a no-brainer. But if I have a technical issue or some other problem, I want that distributor, my local distributor, to still be there to support me on those issues. So I think there's an advantage there for the people who can add a lot more value than just selling you a SKU. So
yeah, no, we're the same way. I mean, we're developing stuff to try to help lead people from, hey, I got this fault code, I need this part number and all those things. And we've talked like, hey, maybe we should go like talk to Amazon about distributing. And at the end of the day, we're like, man, I don't know if that's good for our industry in the long run. I'm not a big believer. Like that's the best thing to happen to our industry. I think it hurts us in the long run more than it helps us. But we'll see how that all plays out. So going back to, hopefully you can share these numbers. So if you had to look at, where you guys thought 2020 would be for growth versus where it's actually going to be, are we negative this year now, do you think, in terms of growth? And does that mean we have a big, huge boom next year because there's this pent up thing or what? How does that play out?
Yeah, so we had this year initially back in January. I'd have to go back. I think we had it basically flat, about 1% for the year. We were looking at somewhat of a slow year. We were concerned about the second half of the year. This is all outside of COVID, just about an economic slowdown. And our economist was a little concerned about that. Obviously, things have gotten a lot worse than that. So our forecast now, currently for the year, for what we call medium and heavy duty aftermarket, which would be class 6 through 8 trailers, is down 11 or 12% for the year. We'll monitor that if things change over the year. We do have a bump up next year, pretty good bump up next year, but that bump gets us back to about the level we were at the beginning of this year. So, and obviously that can change. I mean, it's all fluid. Before we got online here, we were talking about vaccines and other things. The vaccine comes around and some other positive things come around. I would think we would see some real good movement. If things get worse, obviously that could have a impact the other way. So it's always our best estimate based on what we know today. So right now we're looking at the market to be down about 10 to 12%, which is actually better than where we were a few months ago. We had the market being down about 19%, and we think the second quarter came in a little bit better than we anticipated. We think that we know the forecast from the fleets is a little bit more positive than it was 90 days ago, so that holds true. We're headed in the right direction, but still not where we want to be when we started the year.
So I was around in 2008 and the whole financial collapse and all the things that happened there. So I remember talking to people. I was a parts manager back then. And I remember people talking to us saying, oh, well, that's got to be good for you guys selling parts because people aren't buying new trucks. They're keeping them longer. And the part I had to explain to them was, well, you may be true, but what you don't understand is these guys that had 20 trucks are only using 10. So they're just stealing a part or robbing a part off the truck that's parked there instead of actually having to buy a new one, or they're looking for alternatives. So it doesn't quite always flow that way. But let's, maybe, I don't know if you guys have a study on this or have talked about this much, but I kind of call it the COVID ripple effect, and a lot of other people do too. And we kind of saw it where at first we couldn't even pull product out of China because everything was closed. And then they opened up everything. But everybody wanted to ship. So literally our air freight from overseas like went up 10x, and we couldn't get stuff, right? And it was too expensive. So I'm like, oh, we're going to be smart. We're going to go put it on a boat and we're going to ship it here. And that worked fine until the product got here and it got stuck in port for 4 weeks because customs couldn't deal with it quick enough, and everybody's shipping stuff all of a sudden, ocean freight. So do you see a long-lasting ripple effect? I mean, I was just talking to someone the other day. They said they couldn't find a dishwasher because they were all sold out. And someone said they couldn't find they moved into a house and bought all new appliances. They've been waiting 8 weeks and they just can't get them, and moving companies are busy. How long does this ripple effect, and does it have an impact on truck manufacturing or aftermarket parts, and what does that look like?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Our economist, Bob Dealey, has talked about, they talk about whether this is going to be a V recession or U or an L. His perspective is going to kind of be a W, as is, things are going to go up, or so they went down. Now they're going up, but he feels like there's probably going to be another down because a lot of those supply chain issues are going to impact the ability to sell. I mean, my in-laws have a condo in Florida. They needed a repair on their air conditioner, and I ended up interfacing with the air conditioner repair guy. And the guy's like, "Well, I can repair it, but it's got to take me 6 to 8 weeks to get parts." Yep. This is Florida in the summertime, so he's like, "It's twice as much, but I can get you a new air conditioner right now." I don't know if he's telling me the truth, but it sounds like he is. So that's what we ended up doing. So yeah, you have those types of issues. From an aftermarket standpoint, on the parts side of the truck market, the impact from the aftermarket is you're selling less vehicles. I think the forecast for this year was 200,000 Class 8s, or roughly around that much. Now we're about 150. So that means there's 50,000 less vehicles that are going to get old over time that are going to generate and need parts. But when people say, well, it's better for the aftermarket when we're not selling new trucks, those vehicles are going to be there anyway. So that it's not like they're eating more parts, or it's a negative from a standpoint. We just don't have as many vehicles coming into the aftermarket, and that impacts the aftermarket down the road. You mentioned cannibalization. That was a factor to a small degree back during that recession 10 years ago. We don't really see any of that right now. We have a very small percentage of fleets who said, yeah, well, I'm pulling some parts off of parked vehicles. But to this point, we have not seen that be an issue yet. So hopefully things continue to get better and more positive, and there won't be a need to be doing that type of service activity. So
we're in an interesting time, right? Because now we have electric trucks. I mean, we haven't had a new truck manufacturer enter the market in a long time. And all of a sudden you got Nikola, Tesla, there's Rivian with their van. I mean, there's a whole bunch coming into the market all of a sudden. So electric trucks are coming here. People are still talking about autonomous trucks. Things are just getting built better, like transmissions and rear ends. Those things don't just break now at 250,000. I mean, they got 500 or 1,000,000-mile warranties on them now. If you had to look in the future, the next 5 years, do you think any of those trends have a big negative impact, or what should people kind of keeping an eye on the next 5 years as a major trend that they should be aware of if they're in the aftermarket parts or service industry?
Well, certainly keep an eye on the technology. I mean, we're surveying fleets to understand what they're testing, what they're going to think they're going to be using. If they're first, are they using anything right now? And this is everything from sounds old school now, but natural gas to electric to hybrids or anything like that, electric axles, and what they think they're going to be doing in 5 years or 10 years from now. So we're tracking that. We want to see what gets friction and takes hold. Product durability has been going on for a long time. That certainly impacts the aftermarket from a negative standpoint. So if something lasts longer, you're not going to sell as many of them. But that's the way of the world. Products get better, and that's always been an ongoing challenge. But the alternative fuel, the alternative power is, from an aftermarket perspective, is not yet a big impact. It's a very small portion of the market. It'll be interesting to watch and see what takes hold. What gets legs and grows. You mentioned a lot of those new players in the market. I think that's interesting, but then you also got the regular folks that are out there, all the truck manufacturers, and they actually really know how to make trucks, and they can combine the technology. To me, that's even more impressive. If they see the value in making investments there, and they've got a lot of experience in making trucks, that's where I think the growth's going to come from.
I'm 100% on board with you. Nikola's getting a lot of press. Tesla, plus those other guys that are in there. And at the end of the day, Nikola doesn't even have a factory yet, right? And they're not going to have a truck for a while. And Tesla still hasn't put one out, even though they're, I think, a year behind schedule already. But in the meantime, the existing guys, Freightliner, I saw JB Hunt just said, hey, we just did our first delivery with an electric truck. And they're already there. They have existing dealer networks. They have existing infrastructure and factories, as you mentioned. So I do agree with you, the fact that I think these, Daimler and Volvo are some pretty big companies. They're right on the forefront of these electric trucks. It's not new territory for those guys at all. So I think there's going to be some serious competition there and how that all works out. So it'll be exciting to see how it plays out. So very last question for you, and probably the most important one. I heard Stu MacKay has like some legendary truck model collection there at your headquarters. Is it still there? And my kids were asking how they can play with 2,500 trucks. I told them it might not be an option.
Yeah, we do have an impressive collection of scale model trucks here. We've got about 30 cabinets with, I think, about 2,800, 2,900 trucks. My kids are older now, but when they were young, I used to make sure I had some in my office because they couldn't play with the ones in the cases. They couldn't get at them. But he started collecting trucks when he was a kid, never stopped. And it got to the point where, clients of ours would provide trucks. We also provide to our clients, and I'll send you down one. We provide to our clients each year a new scale model vintage truck. But we're in Lombard, just west of the city of Chicago. So if you're ever in the area, now I would say you might want to wait. We're in the process of reconstructing our office. So all the trucks are out of the cabinets right now, which is kind of a mess. But we hope to have it back together here in a few weeks. And but yeah, we do have an impressive collection of trucks here in the office. So.
If you'll send me one, we'll send you a Diesel Laptops one, because we had some made too as well. So we'll do a little swap out there. We always like to collect new stuff, put up behind me here. So that'd be good. So with that said, did I miss anything? What did we not cover? Anything I missed out that we should cover about MacKay and Company?
Well, we're keeping our clients up to date on the latest of what's going on. We're constantly surveying the fleets and the distribution points and looking at what's going on out there. I mentioned we have an economist. So over the next few months, we're having webinars every month with our clients and doing a lot of reports. So if this marketplace is of importance to you and you want to keep abreast of what's going on, feel free to contact us. It's mackayco.com, mackayco.com. Or email john.blodgett@mackayco.com. Pretty easy to find. Contact us, and it doesn't cost anything to discuss how we might be able to help you. So,
well, hey, very awesome. Yeah. I really appreciate coming on the show and kind of give us an overview and everything. It's always great to talk about where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're going. And I think that information helps everybody. So with that, we'll call it a wrap. And I just want to remind everyone, it's not just diagnostics, it's diagnostics done right. Thank you for watching this episode.
Thank you.